If the whole idea of ancient evils, bubonic plagues, puritanical torture, and vengeful witches excites you enough, then you're in for a real treat. You see, today's video will be all about strange, foul forces that have been bugging us with nightmares for a very long time now. Well, with that being said, we're going to take a look at 12 of the most terrifying horror films that offer quite a unique view of the Middle Ages. Mind you, each of the movies mentioned in our list embraces the medieval era's horrors while simultaneously crafting stories in their fashion and also leaving an indelible mark on the genre. So are you guys ready? Without further ado, let's dive right into the video then. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like the content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means an awful lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
What is that?
Dracula Untold 2014. Gary Shore's directorial debut is the kind of movie that will either leave the audience loving or detesting the film. Just one look at the trailer and it was clear that it wouldn't be a masterpiece or even the slightest bit of a reimagining of Bram Stoker's 1987 gothic horror novel Dracula for that matter. Screenwriters Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless made sure that the flick holds up on its own merits while drenched in a world of monsters and darkness. In terms of the plotline, the origin story of the Prince of Darkness takes quite a turn, especially with medieval warrior Vlad the Impaler becoming a vampire so as to ward off the Ottoman invaders from his kingdom and save his people. Well, of course, Dracula Untold hints at a much larger narrative, but we certainly do not want to spoil it for the ones who are yet to watch this movie. So here's highlighting what all makes this movie a terrifying horror movie in the first place. To begin with, what works wonders in favor of Dracula Untold is the acting, and we have two actors to give full credits to. As much as Luke Evans is brilliant in his role of a tragic hero and, more importantly, a victim of circumstance, we have to say the same thing for Charles Dance, who delivers a fantastic performance as the master vampire. Next, we have the storyline, which is not just interesting, but it is also something entirely different than the regular blood-sucking Dracula tale, taking its viewers far back to the very beginning. Furthermore, Dracula Untold sets a distinct mood given Ramin Djawadi's musical score in the background, and add to this Ron Schwartzman's amazing cinematography work. Also, dare we disregard the visual effects? They were not only brilliant but also believable, and that did most of the trick. One can only wonder why it was not set up as a sequel.
Adoro te, serpensa.
Season of the Witch 2011. Dominic Senna's Season of the Witch, with Ron Perlman and Nicolas Cage cast in the leading roles, has the duo as German Teutonic knights who are tasked with escorting an alleged witch who is held responsible for causing the bubonic Black Death to a remote monastery so that the monks there can perform a ritual and stop the plague. As the men set out on their arduous mission, little do they realize that what they are about to encounter is an evil way beyond human comprehension. Season of the Witch has something for everyone, be it fans of medieval adventure, horror, or action. It is truly remarkable how Senna manages to keep his pervasive sense of paranoia intact all throughout a runtime of 95 minutes. Also, what makes Season of the Witch absolutely terrifying is that it is an unremitting shock fest, one that is overflowing with bloated, purulent corpses, ghostly visions, grisly one-eyed witches, and dare we disregard the undead monks. In short, there is blood and filth everywhere. Of course, adding to it is the excellent camera work of Iranian-American cinematographer Amir Mokri and the evocative background score by Atle Orberson. Although it is far from being a masterpiece, the engaging action set pieces and the stunning battle sequences on display might make one think otherwise. While the mere thought of Cage and Perlman in medieval armor might put a lot of viewers off the track, it is their on-screen camaraderie that makes Season of the Witch a fun yet dark, heroic adventure. Mark of the Devil 1970. Often addressed as positively the most horrifying film ever made, Michael Armstrong's West German historical horror flick, which has a 17th century setting in Austria, revolves around a witch hunter's apprentice who begins to question his pursuits, especially after witnessing the sadistic methods of torture and the incessant erratic killing that comes with the job. The grim realization that the charges are simply scams to rob people, mainly of their land, money, and other personal belongings of value, makes the apprentice apprentice go to extreme lengths. Well, you're looking at a movie that features a witch having her tongue ripped out, add to this the occasional whippings and burnings, public executions, eyeball impalement, and countless gory sexual sequences amidst other horrifying things, each barbaric method carried out in a fairly realistic detail. If you ask us, the movie particularly has on display a Chinese water torture treatment inflicted on a helpless prisoner that is repellently violent, and those who have seen the film will certainly agree with us. Based on a screenplay that's also penned down by Armstrong and Adrian Hoven, Mark of the Devil is viscerally terrifying because of its unspeakable acts of cruelty on the innocent, but then again, you'll find your eyes glued to the screen while simultaneously twitching in your seat because of the engrossing storyline. Also, Michael Holmes' striking musical score will stay with you for days to come. While we highly recommend that you watch it, this movie here is definitely not for everyone.
Such claims, however fantastical.
Black Death, 2010. Christopher Smith's Black Death religiously comes under the category of being one of his most prominent pieces of work. While the events of the film are set during the time of the first outbreak of the bubonic plague in England, the narrative has a young monk tasked with finding out the truth about plague victims being miraculously brought back to life in a remote marshland village. This medieval horror movie here gets full points for its ominous setting. Everything is misty and uncertain, and there is this constant feeling of forthcoming danger right from the beginning till the very end of the film. Black Death works pretty well in terms of its plot and pacing. It is well acted, and for that we have Eddie Redmayne and Sean Bean to give full credits to. There's plenty of graphical violence to keep fans of the genre highly satiated, and with dark rituals taking center stage, the film becomes all the more terrifying. Black Death is an intriguing exploration of a man's dark nature, and in the end, the audience is left to determine who is good and who is evil. Also, mark our words when we say that it is the ending which will leave you questioning your own beliefs. Haxan, 1922. Benjamin Christensen's Swedish-Danish silent horror essay film, one that was released as Witchcraft Through the Ages in the US much later in 1968, is often considered as the first horror film that is out there. Haxan has on display the history of witchcraft right from its early days to the present day, which in this case happens to be 1922. So what we're looking at happens to be a documentary-like movie that is divided into 7 segments, and it is partly based on Christensen's study of the Malleus Maleficarium, which, in case if you did not know, happens to be a 15th century German guide for inquisitors. The late Danish film director certainly deserves a special commendation for daring to champion reason over superstition to elucidate things that one fully does not comprehend. Revolutionary and way ahead of its time, Haxan's imagery is surprisingly nerve-wracking even to this day. Of course, while there is no denying that the striking visuals make Haxan a visually arresting movie, giving one a fair reason to watch the film. Additionally, it is also a thought-provoking feature that amalgamates dark humor with some rather chilling sequences, and add to this an insightful commentary on human nature as well. One can only wonder why films like Haxan are not made anymore these days. The Reckoning, 2021. Neil Marshall's The Reckoning follows Grace, a young widow who, after losing her husband during the Great Plague of London, is falsely accused of being a witch and handed over to Judge Moorcroft, England's cruelest and most notorious witch hunter. Under Moorcroft's custody, Grace is tortured in every possible way, and there comes a time when she has to encounter her own inner demons, especially after the devil starts to work his way into her mind. Backed by an intriguing screenplay by Edward Evers Swindell, Charlotte Kirk, and also Marshall, The Reckoning has a strong female lead, which, mind you, is also played by Kirk, and adds to this a good supporting cast as well, while Christopher Drake definitely deserves a special mention for the incredible musical score, so does Luke Bryant for his amazing work of cinematography. This medieval horror flick here has generous amounts of gore and jump scares to keep all the horror hounds invested. As the storyline progresses, the audience is led to believe that our female lead will succumb to the accusations, but this is where the twist comes in, one that you certainly did not see coming. Mind you, the torture sequences depicted in this entertainingly grim flick are not for the squeamish, so for the ones who are yet to watch The Reckoning, don't tell us later that we did not warn you. The Headhunter 2018. Jordan Downey's The Headhunter is a medieval horror gem, one that certainly deserves your time. Starring Norwegian actor Kristoffer Raig as the titular character, the narrative has a lone Viking warrior who earns his living as a bounty hunter, hunting down monstrous creatures and staking their heads to the wall of his cabin. Consumed by grief after brutally losing his daughter to a wild beast, the warrior is hell-bent on revenge and embarks on a journey to pursue the creature responsible for his daughter's death. Will the warrior be successful in getting his vengeance? Well, that's for you to figure out once you see the film, of course. With The Headhunter, Downey effortlessly showed that it is possible to create a gripping tale in spite of having a limited budget. While it is Downey who deliberately leaves a lot of the audience's imagination, we cannot disregard the solitary fact that Raig's performance in the movie is simply phenomenal. Despite him having very few dialogues, Raig smoothly turns what is fitting to address as a one-character film into an amazing journey. What works wonders for The Headhunter is its minimalist storytelling, mind-blowing visuals, and incredibly realistic-looking creatures that transport the audience to a wider world of ghoulish dangers. If you call yourself a fan of independent fantasy horror flicks, please do give this a shot. Witchfinder General 1968. Well, there is a reason Matthew Reeves is best remembered for Witchfinder General and why his movie is still regarded as a horror classic to this day despite of being released way back in 1968. Based on Ronald Bassett's horror novel also titled of the same, this British period folk horror flick happens to be a heavily fictionalized account of the vicious witch-hunting acts of Matthew Hopkins, who is portrayed by none other than the legendary Vincent Price. Hopkins falsely stated to have been chosen as a Witchfinder General by the Parliament during the English Civil War to get rid of witchcraft and sorcery. We're looking at a film that is a brilliant account of all the barbarous acts that were carried out against the alleged witches during the 17th century. Therefore, calling this movie downright gritty, disturbing, and violent would be clearly an understatement. You see, Witchfinder General categorically happens to be one of Price's creepiest roles, and may we add here that Price plays the role of the opportunistic sadist to perfection. The vicious things he does, along with his henchmen, terrorizing and executing the suspected targets, all in the name of extracting a confession, make it clear that nobody is safe from the Witchfinder General. Reeves' unflinching direction, along with John Kokilian's cinematography work, makes this film a masterpiece, one that fans of the macabre are certainly bound to enjoy. Hagazussa, A Heathen's Curse, 2017. When Lucas Feigelfeld made his feature directorial debut with Hagazussa, A Heathen's Curse, little did anybody realize that this film would be so visceral and unforgiving. Featuring a 15th century Alp setting, the narrative follows goat herder Albrin, who is seen leading an isolated life in the secluded part of the Alps, along with her infant daughter. While Albrin's reclusive lifestyle has earned her the reputation of a witch by the locals residing in the village, it is only after she's betrayed and assaulted by the locals that she fully embraces the label and descends into a psychedelic nightmare of hellish visions and cannibalistic horrors. First things first, what we're looking at happens to be a film that is very different in the first place. Even the simplest of scenes are shrouded in uncertainty, and if you ask us, that's the whole point of this German-Austrian horror movie here. This slow, brooding tale of terror happens to be nothing short of an atmospheric masterpiece, and mark our words when we say that you have to be patient enough till the end of it to see how everything eventually comes together. Marielle Baccaro's work of cinematography in a flick is both haunting and ethereal, making Hagazussa, A Heathen's Curse quite a riveting experience. Additionally, the background score by MMMD is simply astounding. The dark, ambient, subtle yet masterful score helps you enjoy this slow-paced horror even more. The Masque of the Red Death, 1964. Did you know that Roger Corman's horror flick was based on two of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories? Well, one categorically happens to be Poe's 1842 short story, also titled The Masque of the Red Death. The other happens to be The Hop Frog, which was published in 1849, serving as the seventh in a series of 8 Corman film adaptations that were largely based on Poe's works. The movie stars horror icon Vincent Price as the diabolical Prince Prospero, who is devoted to the pursuit of sheer evil, terrorizing a plague-infested peasantry while merrymaking in his country castle with his jaded courtiers. One would not be entirely wrong to state that The Masque of the Red Death is not for everyone. Truth to be told, it is an acquired taste. The movie is perhaps the most ambitious of all of Corman's love affairs with Poe's works, and to top things, when you have Price essaying the role of a dastardly prince to the T, you know all hell is bound to break loose. At the core of the film's strength lies the terrific performance of Price. He inevitably steals the show as the malicious ruthless, sovereign, and follower of the devil. While it is true that Corman relied on a professional crew for this movie, he managed to set the right tone, and that's what matters at the end of the day. Also, the compelling, intense script by Charles Beaumont and R. Wright Campbell conclusively worked in favor of the flick, making it even more atmospheric and imaginative in nature. The Pit and the Pendulum, 1991. There is no denying that Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum has had multiple film adaptations, but that never stopped Stuart Gordon from making one. Not only did Gordon direct it, casting Lance Henriksen in the leading role, but he also altered the plot to a love story, giving it a 1492 setting in Spain. With the screenplay of Dennis Paoli, the narrative has Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition, leading a bloody reign of sheer terror when a baker's wife speaks out during a public execution. Torquemada, tempted by Maria's beauty, accuses her of witchcraft and has her captive. Goes without saying, Torquemada has big plans for her, especially inside his torture chamber. Now, many of you will be surprised to learn that Henriksen was not Gordon's first choice and only choice to play the role of Torquemada. In fact, the original choice was Peter O'Toole, followed by Anthony Perkins, and with both not available, the role was eventually passed out to Henriksen, who, may we add, did complete justice to the role. While one cannot possibly disregard that Roger Corman also directed The Pit and the Pendulum back in 1961 with Vincent Price, it is Gordon's 1991 movie that has a lot in store, especially for fans of horror. The European-styled atmosphere and the impressive setting majorly contributed to the flick's success, along with Paoli's screenplay, which was simply solid. The Pit and the Pendulum might not be jam-packed with gore and violence, but the film features graphical scenes that show true horror. In plain and simple words, we highly recommend that you give this a definite watch. Draug, 2018. Class person in Karin Engelmann's Swedish fantasy horror film, one that is steeped in Old Norse mythology and mysticism, follows a royal rescue party sent out to find a missing missionary. But what the rescue party uncovers is the wilds of pagan-worshipping Haxan and something straight out of their nightmares. If you call yourself a fan of the Vikings and have a thing for Scandinavian lore, you have every reason to enjoy Draug. The fact that this film stays true to the time period it is based on and is in total sync with the folklore makes it quite an intriguing watch. With Draug, we have a good pacing, a setting that is dark and brooding, and given the flick's micro-budget, the special effects are as good as you will ever get. As for the reason bit, the historical authenticity shaped the real horror. Well, there is simply just no reason not to watch this one. Marvelous verdict. Well, that's all for today. With this, we finally come to the end of our video here. So which of the ones mentioned did you find most terrifying? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and we sincerely hope you have gotten your fill of horror for today. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching. Have a nice one. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.